This case presents a stark, horrifying picture of how a parental bond, typically revered as a guiding force for good, can be corrupted into a partnership in crime. A father and son, Maxim and Yaroslav Kostyukov, stand accused of gruesomely dismembering their victim to hide the murder and transforming their kill into a macabre meal. In court, Maxim Kostyukov tried to hide beneath a black hat, whilst his nonchalant 20-year-old son Yaroslav stands beside him. Both are indifferent against their charges for this heinous crime, refusing to engage with the presiding judge amidst the glare of the media coverage. Instead, pleading for a private hearing, the cannibal duo had extended an invitation to Yevgeny Petrov, a recent acquaintance. However, the gathering turned fatally sour when an argument escalated, leading the father and son to take a sinister decision: the end of Petrov's life. In this video, I'm talking about the one crime that they committed together, as that's all that's out there. But were Maxim and Yaroslav really upstanding members of society and then one day become cannibal killers? No, I doubt it. I'm just speculating, but there must be more victims. They must have done something to build up to this. Anyway, before we dive into the case, I just want to let you know that I make videos weekly. So if you want to see the next one, please drop the video a like and subscribe if you are new. It really helps me out. Thank you. Despite the scarce background details available on the individuals in this case, and the absence of even a single image of the victim alive, I can tell you what happened in this disturbing case. On the 4th of October 2018, in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, 45-year-old Yevgeny Zhenya Petrov was lured to a gathering by his friend, 41-year-old Maxim Kostyukov. Maxim's 20-year-old son, Yaroslav, joined them, and together they indulged in beers and became merry openly on the street. Eyewitness accounts depict a seemingly happy scene, with the trio laughing and jesting, presenting an air of camaraderie to those around them. But beneath the surface, a much darker situation was about to unfold. As the evening wore on, the trio retreated into Maxim's apartment, where the jovial atmosphere initially persisted. However, tensions soon escalated when a contentious discussion ensued about the conflict between Kiev's forces and pro-Moscow rebels in eastern Ukraine. This dispute was further inflamed when Zhenya revealed his past as a police officer, a revelation that ignited Maxim's animosity due to his own fraught history with law enforcement. This explosive cocktail of political disagreement and personal history brought round a sudden surge of violence. Yaroslav, acting in tandem with his father, restrained Zhenya from behind. Meanwhile, Maxim brandished a knife, and with his son holding the ex-officer in place, he delivered 2 brutal stabs to Zhenya's chest and a fatal one to his throat. What had started as a cordial get-together had spiraled into a horrific crime scene in an alarmingly swift turn of events. The horrifying events took an even darker turn as the father and son duo responded to the aftermath of their violent crime with a calm coldness. Maxim assumed control of the situation, and, in a seemingly indifferent attitude, the two decided to sober up and sleep. leaving Xenia's body where it had fallen. Upon awakening, they were devoid of remorse. Instead, they focused on formulating a plan to dispose of Xenia's body. Maxim, thinking only practically, told Yaroslav that their victim would be harder to identify without a head. With a grim determination, they undertook the gruesome task of decapitating Xenia's body, placing his head in a box on the balcony. Then, in a further grotesque step, they decided to strip the body of its flesh. This is how Maxim thought it was best to get rid of the body: eat it. They meticulously sliced pieces from the legs and torso, carving right down to the bone. Going even further, they cut open his stomach, removing his internal organs, such as the heart, kidneys and liver. It was a gruesome endeavour, executed with a horrifying level of calm and deliberation. Now this is part of what I mentioned earlier. Okay, so people go out and get drunk and they do things they might regret. But killing someone, that's next level. And these people had no regret. And then to start chopping the body. Maxim, a fully grown man, should not have been able to do this, but a 20-year-old Yaroslav having no issues in doing so. Something just doesn't add up. Maxim began to cook a grotesque broth from the human flesh and organs that they had harvested, while the remainder was stored in the fridge. Meanwhile, Xenia's remains continued to decompose in the same apartment shared by the father and son. Once the human broth was ready, they invited a homeless man named Yura to eat with them. Together, they sat down for a macabre meal. In a later twist, Yaroslav had altered his account.
Быстрее. Женина мясо. А потом вы что сделали?
Я его не ел, меня...
Кто ел?
От одного куска стошнило. Батяня, Юра, этот бомжик, в общем, в основном все съел.
Despite these claims, law enforcement maintained that there was irrefutable evidence pointing to the fact that the father and son duo were indeed cannibals who had cooked and eaten their victim. For nearly a week, the father and son coexisted with Xenia's corpse in their apartment. The imminent return of their grandfather from the countryside forced them to contemplate disposing of the body. Quickly, Maxim chose to dump the remains outside near a cellar doorway by a block of flats. The body, covered in bin bags, was discarded without much care. The chilling discovery was made the very next day by a janitor who alerted the authorities. Alexander Grabniek, a resident of the nearby block of flats, recounted her horror upon realizing the decapitated state of the body. She said, "I looked and it seemed like there was no head. I looked again, definitely. Detectives questioned us and told us there was no head." Even more gruesome was the realization that the parts of the victim's legs and torso had been removed for the meat. His pants had been pulled up as to where they had extracted the flesh. This led police to conduct searches within local residents' homes, and it is when they arrived at Maxim's residence that the case took a decisive turn. Assuming they had more time to dispose of the severed head, the father and son were caught off guard when the police discovered it on their balcony, leading to their immediate arrest. The ex-wife of Xenia was called up to identify him through his severed head. Overwhelmed by the trauma of her ex-husband's gruesome death, she has since sought compensation for the insomnia induced by the horrific ordeal. Inside the courtroom, Maxim and Yaroslav exhibited a defiant attitude. They chose not to engage with the media or the court. They even instructed their lawyer to follow the same protocol. Bizarrely, they were seen smirking within their court cage, a confusing display of amusement amidst the grim proceedings. Prosecutor Oksana Karnukh acknowledged the legal loophole in the case, stating, "There is no such crime as cannibalism listed in the Criminal Code of Ukraine. That is why the prosecution cannot include this in the charges in the court. We charge them with murder and aggravating circumstances committed by a group of persons and illegal possessions of arms." The charge for illegal possession of arms stemmed from Maxim's substantial ammunition collection, which further stoked suspicions of additional crimes. Despite the constraints and legal framework, Maxim and Yaroslav confessed to the murder and admitted to the act of cannibalism. Consequently, they were each sentenced to just 15 years in prison. I think what makes this case more chilling is that a father and son are showcasing a level of psychopathy that's deeply unsettling. Their lack of remorse for their actions, coupled with a disinterest in defending themselves in court, shows two individuals devoid of any regard for human life, including their own. As I've previously speculated, and the gruesome nature of their crime and the blasé attitude towards defending themselves does raise suspicions. It's difficult to believe that this act of cannibalism was their first murder or crime. Despite the sentencing, this case leaves more questions about the depth of their criminal history. That's the end of this episode. Until next time, stay sane.